The epitome of Big Ten football. Perhaps it's really Ohio State, Michigan, but Ohio State, Wisconsin, a pretty darn good second place in that category. As we welcome in the epitome of Buckeye Huddle, Tony Gerdeman from BuckeyeHuddle.com. Gerd, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for that deserving introduction.
Ohio State, Wisconsin, it's been an interesting series as the Buckeyes have won 8 in a row. Wisconsin's put some scares in them. Certainly you go back to 2010, Ohio State #1 in the nation, beaten by Wisconsin in Madison. There was a scare a couple years ago from the Badgers, but for the most part, Ohio State has dominated this series over the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, and the way it's been done is there's a lot of kind of playing Wisconsin style in this, or the team that runs the ball best kind of takes over and wins it. Not unlike the Michigan thing. The thing that I'm always impressed by or take note of with this series, even going back to Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer, is this was always the game where the players felt it the longest, like 2 or 3 days after. It was always the one where they came out the most sore, and that just gives you an idea of the brand of football that Wisconsin has been playing since, I don't know, like 1990, whenever, when Barry Alvarez took over in the early 90s there. And they have built this foundation on that style. And that's why I thought it was also interesting when Ryan Day was asked today, I think it was by Clay Hall on Channel 6 here in Columbus, is it easier to prepare for Wisconsin because you know what they're going to do? And he's like, said it's not. He understands the question, but it doesn't, just because you know what to expect doesn't mean that it's easy to deal with and to handle. And that's kind of the fun of you start Big Ten football with a very much Big Ten football game.
The physicality of the Badgers is perhaps one of the reasons why Ohio State held Michael Hall Jr., Josh Proctor, and Tanner McAllister out of the game against Toledo, and why they weren't in a rush to bring Trayvon Henderson back in the game. They wanted to get those guys as much rest as possible because you want everybody healthy going into Big Ten play with a slobber knocker, to use a term of the early 90s as well.
Yeah, and I don't know that any of these players have really experienced anything like this. And I'm sure people have told Ryan Day just how tough it's going to be. And, he's been part of it before, but this is different. And this is a Wisconsin team that has already lost a game, and they are, fighting for their Big Ten lives at this point. They're still undefeated in conference play, of course, but this is a game that if you get that win, it erases the Washington State loss essentially, and it gets them back on the proper footing. And, as you said, it's going to be extremely physical. Ryan Day has preached toughness since the end of last season. This was a team that was called soft offensively, defensively. They wore that badge all off season and in the preseason, and, are trying to, this will be an opportunity for them to show that label is long gone.
And as much as the Badgers had that identity of being a physical running team, Braylon Allen, a top running back for Wisconsin, Ryan Day made the point that Graham Mertz is a dangerous quarterback, and they do throw the ball more than perhaps we think of when we think of Barry Alvarez and Bert Bielema offenses, or Brett Bielema offenses, Bert as we like to call them.
Well, and remember, Graham Mertz is a guy that Ohio State wanted very, very badly, and everybody in the nation wanted Graham Mertz, and so they saw plenty in him. I think everybody saw what Graham Mertz was capable of. I think in his first career start against Illinois a couple of years ago, where he was electric, but has since regressed, but now is getting back up again, where he's no longer holding the offense back per se. But yeah, he's capable of making all of the throws. They are throwing it a little bit more. They have more confidence in him to do that. And I think if Wisconsin wants to be as good as they can't just expect to do it on the ground. If you're not able to throw the ball, the ground gets really, really tough to move. And so if Graham Mertz can even threaten the deep stuff and threaten with the passing game, that makes life so much easier for Braylon Allen, who is one of the rare backs in the country, being as big as he is and able to make people miss and run through people. So it's going to be a sizable test for the Buckeye defensive front.
C.J. Stroud named the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week after the performance against the Toledo Rockets. We've seen C.J. Stroud for a little over a year now. What is his most impressive attribute? Is it the touch he's been displaying this year, the way he's been able to throw the ball on the move, or is it his intelligence, the way that he's picking apart defenses with chess-like precision?
Yes, Mark. Yes, it is. It's all of those things. But, as you're asking,
I think all of the above.
As you're asking this, I'm thinking the accuracy with which he throws, because when he's off, it's noticeable. For other quarterbacks throughout history, when they're off, it's just, well, that was a, you have that. When he's off, you're like, you don't. That's not normal for him. And some of these throws, like the throw to Marvin Harrison, that was just over the outstretched safety's fingertips on the sideline, that was nearly a touchdown. The safety read it the entire way, jumped, and it was still just a little too high for him. The touch has been incredible and the accuracy, but like you said, also the throws on the run, something they've worked on. How many times have we seen it this year where it's like, well, there's no way that is going to be completed, and it is somehow completed? And give credit to all of the receivers for making plays as well. Like that first touchdown to Julian Fleming against Toledo, where there are some really good camera angles of it where CJ is running and he throws it, and he's almost out of bounds as he throws it. The ball is never really inbounds. It hugs the sideline the entire time. And the only guy that can get to it is Julian Fleming, who's trying to get away from his defender in a confined space, and just does it as the ball is getting there. And he has the wherewithal to reach out and grab it. Yeah, those are some incredible throws, but I think the catches are just as good. So overall, I'm just going to say the accuracy, because I think that encompasses all of it.
And that's one of the points that Rockets head coach Jason Candle brought up about his defense, that they had good coverage on the Buckeye receivers. You're 6 inches away, and Marvin Harrison makes the catch because C.J. Stroud's putting the ball only where Marvin Harrison could get it. And you talk about threading the defense. He threaded the offense on that touchdown pass to Julian Fleming, because Kate Stover was right there. Harrison was there as well, but he put it only where Julian Fleming could get it. A remarkable performance by C.J. Stroud, which we're just getting more and more used to. Let's continue talking about that Rocket game a little bit. The defense did give up 21 points. Is that tip your cap to Daquan Finn? Is that, boy, there's some issues for this Ohio State defense? Or is that also, hey, they were down a couple guys as well defensively?
Yeah, well, yeah, not having Michael Hall in there and Tanner McAllister and Josh Proctor, those are 3 starters. I think Jim Knowles came out defensive coordinator and put a lot of this on his shoulders when he also was asked, who was Daquan Finn on scout team? Like, who did you have running back there? And he's like, well, we didn't really have anybody that can move like that, so we didn't really bother with it. And I think that showed up, and he talked about that, where they weren't as prepared as they should have been. He didn't get them as prepared as they should have been for a guy that can move like that. But that's also, it's hard to get guys on scout team that can do that. In the past, I know they used the receivers. Former receiver Jalen Gill was once a scout team quarterback and playing a guy like Daquan Finn just to simulate somebody who can get away. And they didn't. It was, you could tell that they didn't have that in practice. And it showed when you had so many guys, as he said, leaving their feet and lunging, trying to catch him, and they just weren't as sound as they should have been. And now that's something that he knows, okay, we need to work on that. I would be surprised if next time they didn't have a scout team quarterback that simulates that movement better. But also, Jim Knowles is so confident in his system that a lot of the times it's just, as long as we call it right and we tackle it right, then it doesn't matter what the quarterback does. We'll have somebody for him. And they did, but those guys weren't making the tackles.
4th game of the season for Ohio State, 3rd game under the lights. Ryan Day, very complimentary about the atmosphere for the Toledo game. We remember what it was like for Notre Dame. You got to think for Wisconsin, it'll be just as good, as it's going to be a blackout. The gimmicks don't always work at the shoe, but it's going to be an atmosphere that Ohio State's trying to capitalize off with recruiting. It'll be another big recruiting weekend, as Ryan Day was really imploring Buckeye Nation to come out and be the loudest Ohio Stadium has ever been this Saturday against the Badgers.
Yeah, I was really, really impressed with the crowd against Toledo. So you would expect an even better crowd for Wisconsin. And as he said, they'll have all day. The fans will have all day to get ready for the game. And yeah, this is going to be a fun one. And it's one that I think people have been waiting for. I assumed that Wisconsin would be undefeated and like ranked in the top 10 in this one. Of course, they lost to Washington State to kind of ruin that, but I don't think it's going to ruin anybody's mood, because it's a night game in a shoe. And Ohio State is playing for some very serious things this year. And they're doing it in a manner where they've got the running game going. They've got the passing game going. They've got a new defense that is making some plays and gets people engaged. So even the product is more fun to watch, I think, at this point. And I'm expecting the crowd to be wild and, buying into the gimmick a bit. I think it's easier if you just, everybody has something black they can wear, just like everybody has something red they can wear. The stripe it out type of thing probably is too much to ask of the Ohio State crowd, but I think they've done the blackout in the past, and it's looked pretty good. And then you just have to have the energy and the emotion that is commensurate with the gimmick, I guess.
Buckeyes and Badgers, 7:30 Columbus Saturday night. Tony Gerdeman, thank you for joining us.
Thanks.